Oh, good morning to you. I'm having more technical issues now. Look at that. I think I have to turn this computer down. Oh, I'm sorry, you guys. You can see what I'm going through this morning. Bear with me for just a moment. Okay, I think maybe I have that fixed. Whew. What a morning it has been. I have to tell you that yeah, you know the saga of my keyboard, right? The keyboard that started randomly typing the I's, and then I was using the exclamation point as an I, and then the T went, and then the Y went, then it was the O, now it was the N. Then the whole thing just started going haywire. And yeah, so I got a wireless keyboard so that I didn't have to use the keyboard on the computer. Well, I have to say that today the wireless keyboard wouldn't connect to the computer. And so I had no way to log in. Um, no matter what I did, I changed batteries. I logged in, I logged off. Anyway, that's what happened. And I'm sorry if you can hear an echo. Hold on for just a second because I think. Well, what a morning. I'm telling you, my tech support is as frustrated as I am. So, thank you for being here. Thank you for putting up with my tech issues. I'm so sorry that this has happened this morning, but hey, here we are. We're going to get it going on anyway. After all this, I hate to ask you to click the like button and click the subscribe button, um, but it is. I hope there's something. Uh, that YouTube thinks is interesting going on here, and they won't know that unless you do the clicking of the like and the clicking of the subscribe. So thank you for considering doing that. Of course, the first thing we want to talk about is the former president. I will tell you, though, that Nikki will be back tomorrow. Thank goodness, and through the rest of the week. I'm excited to see how things are going for her in San Francisco. There is a lot of news about the robo taxis going on, about people returning to work in San Francisco as well. So we'll see if she's seeing any extra traffic. But I miss her when she's not here for more than one reason. And it will be nice to have her back tomorrow. But we forge on here on the Nikki and Medoro show, just you and I sailing the sea together. You know who's not alone though? It's Donald Trump. He's not alone. It turns out the Georgia district attorney has a whole boatload of company for Donald Trump when it is concerns co-conspiring to commit election crimes, allegedly. The DA, Fani Willis, calling it a criminal enterprise. It is, I mean, I don't want to say it was like Christmas for me yesterday, but kind of like a huge gift, maybe. And it's hard because you don't want to dance on someone else's misery. But on the other hand, it was our misery too. And I feel like we've all been waiting for something like this to happen, right? And finally, perhaps finally, we see that there's some justice coming for all of us. Uh, what is happening to this former president, I will say, is truly unprecedented. The scope of the crimes he was allowed to have committed against this country, I think, should make everyone's blood boil. Every one of us. And I don't care if you're a liberal libbity lib or the most conservative serve in the world, the one thing we should be able to agree on is the upholding of our Constitution. is making that, well, it's who we are as a people, right? I mean, it's what we base our country on. It is our country. So if you can't uphold that, um, then I would say you're very un-American. And I don't understand people who can call themselves patriots and then can actively deny that the Constitution wasn't trampled on by the former president, because we saw it with our own eyes. I used to think that it was important to have respect for the office of the president, no matter who was in it. I have been calling Trump former President Trump because I respect the office and because he was a former president. But I don't know that he deserves that respect. And so I've really been struggling with even using his name and president in the same sentence. That's how outraged I am by what I believe, innocent until proven guilty. But again, the evidence is pretty convincing, that he's done. I don't think a district attorney or a federal prosecutor would file charges against a former president unless it was a pretty ironclad case. You don't take someone of that stature and just see if something sticks. You have to be pretty sure, right? At least that's what I think. So I find myself now weighing whether I want to use that title for him. I don't think it's deserved. I don't think that you think about the Constitution and that you can think he's worthy of the respect. If I don't call him a former president, then does it denigrate that office? Something I'm battling with right now. I'll let you know how it works out. You'll hear it in the news if I don't say former president. But I'm so angry at him because it used to be that whatever party, was in power, you knew that the things would be okay, that America was still going to be America, that the Constitution was still going to be respected, upheld, and beloved. And it isn't, and it wasn't. So here's what happened yesterday. Former President Trump, I said it, criminally charged for of course, the fourth time this year, we know. The DA in Georgia out of Fulton County accused Donald Trump of being the head of a criminal enterprise to overturn the 2020 election. And he isn't alone in this. There are 18 other defendants in addition to Trump. There are 41 charges in total. There are 30 unindicted co-conspirators. I mean, Fani Willis brought it. She's not messing around. Her indictment includes racketeering charges. And I guess she's really had success in the past when it comes to filing these charges, this type of charge, and making this type of case. Everybody, all 19 defendants, including Trump, have until Friday, August 25th to surrender voluntarily. And then they come after you. She wants to try all 19 together, and she wants to do it quickly. I don't know what that means as far as her timeline. The document does include, which I'm delighted to see, the evidence of the infamous phone call. I just need to find 11,000, is it 780 votes? Yeah. I think that was the catalyst for her. Fani Willis took office. She was in office one day and that call came in. And right then she started collecting evidence. So this has basically been the whole time she's been the district attorney for Fulton County in Georgia. In all 4 indictments against the former president, he's facing 91 charges. 91. And we talked yesterday about the timing of these indictments. I just don't find that even if he's being targeted by people who say, "Oh, we better make sure that we file these charges because, we don't want him back in office for whatever reason." I don't feel like you're going to file these cases and not have the evidence and not be able to back it up. So I just, I go back to both things can be true, and it's um it's outrageous what he's accused of doing. When you talk about a criminal enterprise, it makes you think of a mob boss. It makes me think of a mob boss anyway. And so that's what I'm looking at here. We have a president who's being accused of crimes they accuse mobsters of. The violation of the Georgia Racketeer Influenced Corrupt Organizations Act, or RICO Act, um, apparently is being used because of several things that this group of 19 defendants did. Fani Willis says they engaged in a criminal racketeering enterprise to overturn Georgia's presidential election result. Making false statements, filing false documents, forgeries, impersonating officials, computer breaches, and attempts to influence witnesses. I have wondered often why Giuliani hasn't been charged with anything. Problem solved. Here comes Giuliani with charges, and Meadows. They're both now facing charges related to the subversion of the election as well. Thank you. Thank you, Fani Willis. Well, Meadows apparently is the only other White House official other than Trump. The rest are lawyers, and Giuliani has the most charges, 13 counts of any defendant besides Trump, who's also facing 13 counts. Fani Willis says both men, Meadows and Giuliani, played key roles in efforts to overturn the election. It's unspeakable. It's unspeakable. It's historical. I don't know what's going to happen, though, with the timing of the federal trial and the state trial. And I guess they'll figure it out and coordinate amongst each other. And I think it will be the first time that a presidential trial, I guess, will be going on at the same time as a presidential campaign. And so I don't know how that works, except to say that instead of rallies or, campaign pit stops at fairs, Trump will be speaking outside the courthouse, and those will be his campaign speeches. You know, the ugly vitriol that he's hurling at everyone in what seems to be a panic to try to just fling accusations everywhere, those will be his campaign speeches. They they are accused of some of the co-defendants of doing some pretty shady stuff, and that includes the breach of a voting system in Coffee County. This was after the election, but apparently the allegations are that there was some tampering with voting machines, that Trump and company tried to they trespass in the computer system and tamper with the actual voting machines. It's it's funny because for all the times that Trump said they're fixing the election, right? Or the fix is in. It's a hoax. I was never going to win because they were going to cheat from the beginning. Well, guess who cheated allegedly? Guess who's the one that did it? It's one of those me think thou doth protest too much. You're all the things that you're the laundry list of accusations you're hurling against someone else turns out because it wasn't too far from your own truth. It's a shocking situation. I just it's on one hand, I say it's a Christmas gift because we've been waiting for justice. But on the other hand, it's a sad, sad day for America that this could ever be allowed to happen, that we ever could have put somebody in office that would do this. So I'm glad that justice, the wheels of justice are finally, um, you know, meeting this moment. But I'm also, to quote Governor Gavin Newsom, but I'm also just devastated for our country that this is what it's come to. I can't even. Um, and I apparently, whereas with federal charges, they can be pardoned by if we elected a Republican president, or really any president, even a Democrat could get in there and say, we're going to bring the country together and we're going to pardon this president and whatever, former president. That's not the way it works with state charges. I don't believe. What I'm told is that not even the governor of Georgia can issue a pardon, that it has to go through a committee, and several people have to agree. Maybe makes that process a little more fair. I don't know. But Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia was asked yesterday about this whole situation, and his quote is this. What he said is that he had already been subpoenaed to testify in this case. And his office says he won't be speaking. Given that the governor was subpoenaed in 2022, the office will not be commenting further. So they're staying out of it, and it is very political for them. Are they not commenting because of the legalities, or are they not commenting because there's a lot of Trump supporters in Georgia? What does that mean for a jury selection? I would like to think that Americans would put the Constitution and America first. But I would have thought that of any president too. So I've been sadly disillusioned. Former President Trump, of course, is back on Truth Social, flinging the lies. He says he'll present a conclusive report on Georgia election fraud, and he's going to do that on Monday at his golf course in New Jersey. He says, based on the results of this conclusive report, all charges should be dropped against me and others. There will be complete exoneration, in caps. They never went after those that rigged the election. They only went after those that fought to find the riggers. I would argue he is the rigger, right? He is the one that rigged. He is. Nobody else rigged. I was looking at Hillary Clinton was interviewed. I mean, this is a moment where and I remember at a debate, she was on stage and she warned us as a country. She said, if this person gets in office, bad things will happen. This is dangerous, right? She could be gloating right now. She could be, I told you soing. And she isn't. She really isn't. She said, she happened to be on Rachel Maddow right when this indictment came down. And she said, I am not happy about it. She said, I'm not happy about the indictments. I am sad for America, is what she said. When someone is so nasty, like the former President Trump, when someone is so full of ugliness and hate and making fun of people and racism and just all the the bad underbelly of yuck. That's a great new term, bad underbelly of yuck. It's hard not to feel gleeful when they finally get their comeuppance or when justice is somehow served. But Hillary Clinton's right. I shouldn't be calling it a gift. I shouldn't be, because of what it means for America. So I think it's a page I will take from her. as she's more sad for the country than she is happy that that Trump is getting his just desserts. But I want to hear what you have to say. I know you've been waiting a long time to say it, given all my tech problems this morning. So let's hear what you have to say in the comments. Mm, let's see. Square, true tears of joy. We know the optics of this is shameful. It's true. I'll scroll back a little bit because I know you guys have been talking about it. Um, let's see what else you have. Oh, I've been told by Radcliffe never to use wireless for basics. Includes the mouse. Lesson learned. I guess I have to spend the $200 to get my computer keyboard fixed is what I have to do. Yeah. Um, oh, Cynthia, what a lovely thing to do. Thank you. Cynthia with a $20 super sticker on a day that I'm having all kinds of tech problems. Really appreciate you supporting the show. Thank you so much. Of course, the super chat is open as Cynthia has demonstrated, and I'm very grateful for that. Beth Farmer too. Buy a backup keyboard with a cord. I think I have to get the actual laptop fixed is what I have to do. Yeah, very frustrating. And I'm so sorry you guys had to wait for me. Thank you for waiting. Vilma writing today, I don't like feeling joyful for someone else's misery, but when it comes to Donald Trump, he caused his own misery and he earned this indictment. It's true. I kind of waffle back and forth in that one, Vilma, but it's true. Anonymous writes, Trump is bad, but let's not forget Bush Jr. lied to send us to war in the Middle East. Well, yes, okay, but that is not this. And so here's what I don't understand, Anonymous. Why do we have to whataboutism it, right? And I know that might not be your intent, but why do we have to mention that when the focus is this historic indictment? Because I don't think we need to think about that today. We all know that happened. That has nothing to do with this. And I don't want to take the focus off of it because I think it's so important for people to get it, to understand it. Deidre writes, I so wanted Don Jr. to be on this list, but sadly he wasn't. I want to think, Deidre, and aloha to you. I want to think that Don Jr. would have been on the list if there was evidence, right? It speaks to the case that the DA is making, that it's not political. If it was political, they'd all be on there. Perry Joe Jim Bob, best thing in Georgia is a potential Prez chump cannot pardon himself from state charges. That's right. Yeah. Yeah, Eric says sadly, well, he's Sandy rather, he's co-opted the GOP as his personal cult. When do they step away? When do they say enough? When do they say this person doesn't represent us and isn't who we stand for, isn't what we are? That's what they need to do. Sandy, will any of this prevent him from being able to run for president? I've heard different scenarios. I've heard if he's convicted of certain charges that he can't. And then I've also heard that, other charges he can be convicted of and he could run the country from prison. So I don't know about these charges and whether any of them carry the penalty of not being able to run for office. Eric says the right wants to lock Joe up over his son with much less evidence than there is for Trump. Trump's evidence seems to me to be right out there in the open. I mean, I'm sure that there are documents we haven't seen, things they have done allegedly behind the scenes that we'll find out about. But yeah, it seems like a lot of it we saw play out in public. Square says banish him from the list of presidents, delete him from history. US doesn't do that, I know. No, we don't. You know what I was thinking too? And I know this is something else that's so asinine and ridiculous that we don't do it. But there are crimes so egregious against this country that it seems to me there should be crimes where your citizenship is stripped away, right? Like if you've been elected to the highest office and entrusted with the United States government and you use it for your own benefit or you do something like this, You're just not worthy of citizenship. And I know we don't do it, but I think maybe we should. Maybe that opens a can of worms. I don't know. Ron says he doesn't deserve it. People died and got hurt because of him. Also, over 1 million Americans died during COVID unnecessarily because of that idiot. It could be, well, likely would have been that whoever was in office, people would have died because of COVID. But not taking it seriously, not closing things down right away, not trying to get ahead of it, no bueno. But also, I will say in Trump's defense, he did fast track the vaccine, right? That's the one good thing he did. And I'll give him that. I'll give him that. Susan says I just call him 45. Zachary, to uphold the Constitution, we must agree to 2 plus 2 equals 4. Unfortunately, a large faction of the GOP allows for 2 plus 2 equals 5. Yeah, no logic. I'll be here listening for the news cycle where his name doesn't come up. Well, Ricky O'Bear, and hi and good morning to you. He's going to be front and center of the news for a long time to come, because it's going to be months until these trials take place. This is an historic thing. We can't not talk about it. We can't not cover it. Deidre, the kicker in the indictment was the letter Trump sent to Raffensperger in September of 2021, asking him to overturn the election 8 months after Biden was sworn in. The indictment in all its glory, you're able to see the whole thing and read the whole thing. It's right. It's all on all the websites. Click here to read the indictment. Love it. They're not hiding anything. It doesn't seem like. David Odell says, and maybe this is the way to go, David. You might have a point. I think it's okay to say disgraced former president. Yeah. Harry says, unfortunately, he's still the former president, just like Nixon. And is it one of those things, Harry, where I'm trying to wipe away our mistake and just sweep it under the rug and pretend it doesn't exist? But the more I have to say former president, the more we remember the mistake and we don't repeat it. Is that what it is? No. Sandy's looking for his defenders. I don't think there's much of a defense, honestly. I mean, isn't it a day for the trolleys to sit quietly and just kind of, be quiet? Maybe they're questioning everything that they thought. Too much of a hope, right? Calvin. Hi, Calvin. He says he's got a lot of other titles, just a tiny loser forever. Confirmed by Stormy. Eric says he has sunk to number 1 on the list of worst has he sunk to number 1 on the list of worst presidents yet? I think it's time by now. Liz refuses. Don't call him by his name or refer to him as former P. I refuse. When I'm doing news, though, I'm not just doing news for myself. I'm doing news for everybody. And that's people who like him and people who hate him. And he is what he is. I'm telling you guys, I struggle with it because of I don't believe he deserves the respect of that office. And I have a hard time giving it to him. Vilma writes, Trump has been getting away with wrongdoings all his life. Justice must prevail for him as well as the others. And Janice, I can't disagree. He did not honor his oath of office. It's fine to drop former president from his title. SF Tesla. No wonder he declined opening a presidential library. He'll need a library in the prison he gets sent to. The Penitentiary Presidential Library. John Watson with a powerful question. I wonder how many other phone calls Trump made to states he lost narrowly. Like he called Georgia, but nobody happened to be recording his call. Oh, in other states where we haven't heard yet that he placed the calls there too. I mean, we can only hazard a guess, right? Joyce says you can't compare Nixon and Trump. I don't think you can either. I think for the good of the country, Nixon resigned. Not to be too Rothmanish about it, but Nixon appeared to see the writing on the wall, um, resigned from office because he knew, and I'm not sure if this is a racist term, but he knew the jig was up. I don't know where that comes from. That's that cliche. But he resigned. Imagine if Nixon hadn't resigned, if he had somehow tried to, battle it out to the end and blamed everyone. But it was a different country then. We had different, we still respected decorum and the process and the Constitution. And I don't dispute that ugliness could have been stirred up by the right person. But Nixon wasn't a Trump in that he would stir up the ugliness. I don't think. I could be wrong. Maybe I'll have to ask John Rothman about it, my resident Nixon expert. Eric says Georgia doesn't usually ask you to surrender twice. It's likely he's going to surrender rather than get the frog march. Of course, I think so too. Because he's not going to stay in jail pending trial. Although I would enjoy that. That's not very nice of me, is it? I'm sorry. Vilma says, I blame Trump for the political environment and division in our country and for trying to severely damage our democracy. All of that, Vilma. All of that. And we should be outraged as a people. I don't care what your politics are. You should be outraged. I mean, far be it from me to tell you how to feel, but you should be outraged. Square with the old song for Fani. Take a load off Fani. Take the load for free. Yeah. Put the load right on top of TRUMP. I just want 11,780 years in prison, says Phineas. And Deidre, with the Georgia can televise its proceedings, something that we'll talk to Jim Avila a little bit later on the Mark Thompson show, which starts at 11. But it's something that, he's talked about, that America deserves to be able to have this be transparent, right? Was a crime against all of us. We're all the victims in this case. So we all deserve to see justice done. I feel it should be televised. So yes, in the Georgia case, they can televise. Mike and Napa, how do we prevent Trump from being allowed on the ballot? I wish I knew the answer to it, Mike. I wish I knew the answer. And I don't know. But I'll ask if there's a way. I don't think there is a way, but I'll ask my experts and get back to you. But from what I understand, I don't think there's a way. It would be nice if Republicans in the primary decided that he wasn't their person and his name didn't appear on the final ballot. So we would be confident going into this election that we weren't going to see anything like this again, that we were safe from all this stuff. But here he is, shockingly, leading the GOP presidential hopefuls by a lot. Bigly, as he says. Save words, says Sherry. Just say Trump. Yeah, I do too, Square. Kind of very creative. Hi, Murphy. John, Fani Willis seemed very professional and competent last night, and she is. Trump, has flung the most vile comments at her. She's a Black woman. He's accused her of being a racist. I think he accused her of being affiliated with gangs. Again, with the pot calling the kettle black, right? Everything he says is he's done. He's the criminal enterprise. He's accusing her of this. And she told her staff, do not respond to him. It's one of those things like in sports where if you have a really good athlete and he's being bullied at school or made fun of, and he will, because people are jealous or whatnot, and his way of talking back is showing excellence on the field. That's kind of Fani Willis. Not that I often make sports analogies, but Fani Willis told her staff, don't respond. We're going to respond in court. We are going to take our fight to court because that's where we're going to win. That's where we are right and just. I'm not going to get involved in all this or mired in all this. Very professional. Perry Joe Jim Bob, President Trump serving office while serving time in Georgia. I hope not. That would be a nightmare. Eric says, Mike, we really can't stop him from being on the ballot unless he's convicted of insurrection. I don't think, is he charged with insurrection? I have to go back. I don't think he's charged with it, right? I don't know. Phineas says shyster. I don't know what the literal translation is of that, so I'm sorry if that is a swear word in Hebrew, I would think. Shouldn't be used for just lawyers. Trump's photo should be in Webster's under shyster president. Yeah, I do too, Vicky. I mean, it makes her respectable and, as commented, very professional. I like how Fani Willis refuses to be drawn in at the personal level. Absolutely. This is on the up and up. She's for real. You should be scared. Trump should be scared. This is the real deal. I mean, this is a big, big indictment with teeth and fire. She brought it. Don't mess with Fani Willis. Don't mess with Georgia. Don't cheat in Georgia. Nancy with an interesting comment. You have to admit this gives Biden political cover too. Can you expand on that, Nancy? What you mean by that? Because you think that Georgia's state case, President Biden can't be accused of somehow manipulating the Department of Justice, as Trump has said again and again and again, and the Georgia case is not related. So it gives him political cover because if it's going on in Georgia, clearly the Department of Justice is doing the right thing, and it shows that he isn't behind it all, pulling strings. Perhaps. But if you meant something different, let me know. State dinners in the prison cafeteria. Wow. That's even a possibility should shock Americans. I'm wondering why Lindsey Graham wasn't on the list, writes Liz. Again, I think if any of these people had evidence against them, Fani would have been like, and you, and you, and you, right? Vilma says, my fear is that Republicans in state legislature in Georgia may try to get Fani Willis dismissed. That would be awful. Phineas also talking about Lindsey Graham, saying he needs to be prosecuted too, and any politician involved in January 6th that didn't vote to honor the election. Is it enough to have history judge them? Is it enough that in, I don't know, 50, 75 years, hopefully, history will look back and see the people that were out for themselves? Is that enough? I don't think it's enough. I want justice. Mallory says, pretty sure Giuliani used RICO a lot when he was prosecuting in New York City. He should be very familiar with its parameters. I wonder if Rudy Giuliani looked at this and went, I'm screwed, man. Anonymous says, I blame some news media sites that fuel the negative hate clickbait and constantly gave Trump free press because they had nothing else to talk about. All that attention just fueled his fans. So I guess here's the question, Anonymous, because last night, as I create the little picture for each show and the comment or the words over the picture, I am looking for something that will allow you to understand what the flavor of the show, what we'll be talking about, right? I'm also looking for something that amuses me. Am I engaging in clickbait? Am I part of the problem? I mean, I want it to be something when you see it in the morning and log on, chuckle a little bit and then come on into the show. Is that me giving Trump free press? I would argue this is news of news of news, top of the news. I mean, I have other things to talk about, but really, this should dominate. We shouldn't have to talk about anything else. This is a former president. Look what he's accused of. How is this not news? So maybe it's free press. Maybe it plays into his new campaign strategy of taking all the free press he can get, negative or positive. But I don't know how you get around that, what you're saying, because I don't necessarily disagree with you, Anonymous, but also meeting the obligation to talk about the most important stories of the day. And this is the most important story of the day. So how do you not? How do you not? But I struggle with it too. And I just feel like the story, I mean, whatever the story was is the most important, that's the one that I will focus on. So yeah, I don't think I did it wrong, but I hear what you're saying. Vilma, maybe Giuliani and Meadows didn't get federal indictments because their state indictments or convictions can't be pardoned by a president. So you think that somehow Jack Smith and Fani Willis were discussing this, or you charge these guys, I won't charge them. I don't think so. I think if there was evidence against them, and we may still see federal charges filed, but if there was evidence against them at that level, they'd be facing charges at both the federal and state levels too. And maybe it goes to the severity of what they've allegedly done here. SF Tesla, to say nothing of laying blame on the Russians. I don't know. I don't know. Are you talking about Russian election interference? No. Yes, Daniel. And I think we have to remember it every time he opens his pie hole. Daniel says Trump is a mirror. Whatever he claims others are doing, he does. Listen with careful ears every time he opens his mouth. He's admitting to exactly what he's doing, right? Every accusation is a confession. That's right. That's right. And I think sometimes I forget that. And I get caught up in the, oh, I can't believe he said that. That's so awful. And instead I need to turn it and go, oh, this is what he's doing? Okay. This is what he did? I don't understand it, Eric. People still blindly support him. Again, way ahead in the polls. I don't understand. It's not a terrible thing that's happening, says Vicky in Sausalito. Hi, Vicky. She says it shows that the system is working. I wish it had worked more quickly. I also wish that it hadn't been allowed to happen in the first place. The minute a president or any political candidate starts blatantly and obviously tampering with the election, we should have put a stop to it. Should not have been allowed to carry forward. The minute, months before the election, that Trump stood up and said the fix is in, because of course he was talking about himself, right? There should have been swarms of investigators headed to his office. What do you mean the fix is in? Show us. By the way, you can't say that unless you have proof. Oh, and what are you doing? Let me meet your campaign staff. I feel like we should have clamped down on it. Day late and a dollar short. I don't know if we can do that, but it sure seems like the minute we, have an appearance of impropriety, we should have taken action. The Georgia trial will be televised due to Georgia state law, I believe. Love it. Because I think we deserve it. Perry Joe Jim Bob, January 2025, Trump takes the presidential oath of office in the morning, perp walk in Georgia in the afternoon. Lord in heaven, I hope you're wrong. We won't, Al. Hope the world stops talking about this dude. It's been nonstop for the last 7 years. How do we, again, I pose the question, how do we not? And for the last several years, we've been kind of waiting to see where all these investigations go. And now that they've all cracked wide open and the indictments are laid out before us, how do we not talk about it? I mean, I understand that you're tired of Trump. I get it. But I just don't know what you expect. We're remiss if we don't talk about it, I think. Yeah, shameful. It is very shameful, Square. I agree. He writes, behind the tears of joy, we all know the optics of this is shameful. Mean Streets, welcome to the show. I haven't seen your name before. A Georgia prosecutor lays out her claims of a Trump criminal enterprise. Yeah. Phineas says the DC trial won't have a tainted jury. I know they were trying to get the Trump team, Trump and company, were trying to get that trial moved to Virginia. I don't know if that'll happen. It'd be interesting if it was moved to Virginia and he was still found guilty. I mean, then what do you say, right? Oh, oops. Just look at Trump lovers in Iowa, says Perry Joe. Chris says the Democrats should just change their name to the We Hate Trump Party. Let me tell you this, Chris. If a Democrat had done this, I would be equally as outraged. And here's the thing about Democrats. It seems to me that we would have been less likely to circle the wagons and defend someone or even elect someone that we saw as being a morally bankrupt person just to have our policies put in place. I think conservatives stand behind Trump because they got what they wanted in a political way, not because they like him as a person, not because they like what he stands for, but that they wanted the Supreme Court justices, put into place. They got the policies they wanted put into place. And so it made sense for them, even though morally they might have disagreed with him, in a religious way they might have disagreed with him. They got what they wanted. And so that's why they support. Democrats, I don't think, and maybe I'm giving Democrats too much credit. I don't think Democrats can palate ditching morality in lieu of policy. So I think you're wrong there. I mean, maybe it's the We Hate Trump Party, perhaps. How about instead of the We Hate Trump Party, how about the We Hate people who try to subvert democracy and kill off what makes America America Party? How about We Hate Un-Americans masquerading in the White House Party? How about that? How about the We Love America Party, and we won't stand for someone who comes in and tries to thwart democracy? How about we're that party? I can get behind that. Absolutely. Yeah. Eric says, I don't have the time or energy to deprogram a single MAGA head, much less a third of the country. Shocking at so many, huh? Vilma, I want the Trump era done. I don't want to hear about Trump at all anymore. Trump's wrongdoings and delayed court trials keep Trump front and center. But it's news. Again, Vilma, I don't know how we don't cover it. Yeah. Liz, we should have listened to Hillary from the start. So many ignored her warnings. I hear that you guys are saying there's other topics to discuss and news that will enlighten and encourage. And I agree with you. But is this the day for it? Or is this the day to look at what's happening in our country? Because it is big and it landed with a giant thud. Vicky writes, Hillary Clinton, why are you feeling sad about this? We've been going high and it hasn't been working. I don't think she has to go low. She's not running for anything. And I think she's legitimately feels sad for America. Hmm. Mike says he needs to be put in a cell alone, lined with mirrors, so he can blame that guy. It's true. I don't know. Well, you guys, mean streets. Trump had 4 years to lock her up. Why didn't he do it? Trump has to be the dumbest president ever. Vilma, Trump created and played on people's mistrust of government. That created part of the divide in our country. Hillary should have been our first female president. Yeah. I don't care whether you liked the sound of her voice or thought she was arrogant or didn't like the way she carried herself or if you felt she talked down to you, whatever way she rubbed you the wrong way. I think we can all admit this country would have been a lot better off. We wouldn't be going through this now. We wouldn't be talking about him now. And I mean, I wish that would have been the way it is. I wish I didn't have to say his name all the time. But here we are in the situation we're in. Yeah, John, that's right. He can't. Apparently, it has to go through some type of panel, which I think is interesting. They have a different system. Let's take a look at Ron's comment. It's in the context of Republicans supporting people who lie to the American people. If you recall, Scott Ritter, the U.S. UN lead, went all over Iraq and they did not have weapons of mass destruction. Oh, to lying to people to get what you want? Yeah, I guess that's an age-old thing. Let's see if there's any other comments to say before we do move on. But thank you for the discussion. I've been itching to talk to you guys about this and see what you have to say. Murphy, I feel like he'll start a whole new set of crimes if banished. Keep him here. Keep an eye on the crimes. Yeah, what if we stripped his citizenship and sent him to some other place? Some other island with a giant Trump mansion on it? I don't think you're right, Chris, about Trump having to be invented. Uh, Perry Joe says my French ancestry wants to bring out a guillotine. I hear that, but I think I don't want to wish violence or ill health or death on anyone, no matter how angry I am. I've been Burgundy Cat says I've been sick of Trump since the 80s. Can't believe people fell for the grifter. Vilma says there's a lot of Republicans that feel sorry for Trump. They think Democrats are out to get him, so they stick by him. Yes, Electoral College needs to be revamped. Trolls are out in force defending the grifter in chief. States need to amend their presidential requirement to bar anyone that has formerly been president and having been impeached more than one time. Well, like if you've been, but see, the problem with that is that impeachment isn't a conviction, right? An impeachment is an accusation, and then you have to be convicted in that impeachment. And it seems to me that impeachment has become largely political. It's not the same as being convicted in a court of law. And so you could have political impeachments, then preclude someone from running for office just because the other party had more people in office and didn't like him or her. So, but I hear what you're saying. We need to do something to get people like this not to be able to run. More talking about discussions about whether we should be discussing it or not. Funny. We'll talk about whether we should talk about it. Al says you could not talk about him, but as seen in chat, as news media does, fosters more engagement in comments. Well, I think people want to talk about it. I mean, you don't hear of this monumental thing happening with this indictment landing yesterday and not want to talk. I mean, the first thing I wanted to do is come running into my office and talk to you guys about it. That's the first thing I was like, oh, I can't wait to hear what they all have to say. I can't wait to hear their thoughts. I can't wait to share this and talk amongst ourselves as Americans and figure out what we think about all this. When you guys comment, your words make me think. And I hope I'm giving that back. And so when we share ideas as Americans, again, the victims of these crimes, I don't know. I mean, does it foster more engagement to be talking about this? Perhaps. But I don't know about you. I personally need to talk about it. I'm not a hold it in kind of girl. Yeah, Frank, worst president ever for sure. Worst American ever? Totally. I'm sure there have been presidents. There were presidents, Civil War era presidents and post Civil War era presidents that were awful, that didn't help rebuild the country in the way they should, right? That didn't do what they could to help America move forward. Getting my sweater off the floor. There were presidents in history that were probably as bad. But I think it would be a real contest to pick the worst. And I think Trump is, if you want to know the contest that he might win, that's the one in my book he wins. Even Fox News can't help Trump supporters. Yeah. Well, okay. Um, thank you guys for your discussion about all this. I appreciate it, and I'm glad we had a chance to talk about it. I know that on the Mark Thompson show today, we'll hear from Jim Avila, former White House correspondent. We'll also hear from Pulitzer Prize winning author David K. Johnston. And those are conversations that I'm riveted by. So I hope that you'll join me for the Mark Thompson show, which starts at 11 to talk about these things and more. Just see. Okay. Just making sure I'm on a new computer that with a keyboard, or my husband's computer with a keyboard that's working. So just want to make sure the time is right. My Mark show starts at 11. And I can't wait to hear what Jim Avila, who sat in the White House, has to say about this, what David K. Johnston, who is a Trump expert and has seen through everything from the start, what he has to say about this. Laura Beth kind of blaming the media, saying if the media had scrutinized his character, past criminal activities, scams, sexual abuses, unpaid contractors, business bankruptcies, failures as a human being, more would have learned his sickness. They did though, Laura. Remember when he was running the first time and there were stories about from business owners saying, he took my services and never paid me? We knew about the fraud at the university. There were allegations. I mean, I don't know how you can talk about the allegations of sexual abuse, but until they're, proven, corroborated, whatnot, I don't know if you can use them, trust them, because anyone could say anything. Unpaid contractors, they did discuss business bankruptcies we knew about, failures as a human being, you know, cheating on multiple wives, what have you. I think we did know. I just think people were so maybe overcome by the persona and the ability to finally say we talked about the ugly yellow underbelly earlier, to say what has been, you know, roiling in the ugliness. They didn't care. Didn't care. SF Tesla, Trump's upsetting the apple cart has the benefit of messing up the incumbent's plans to rule. And Laura says this lays bare the weaknesses, inconsistencies, and ethical duplicity in this government. No indicted candidate should be allowed to run, let alone pardon themselves. Congress, step up. One part of me wants to agree with you, Laura, because of the outrageousness of the allegations of the crimes that we all pretty much saw him do. And I don't want him to be able to run. But if I think about what that means in the future, it could mean that if someone is indicted in a frivolous way, it could be just to keep them from running, right? And that could be someone from any party. That an indictment could be political. I don't think this one is, but an indictment could be political in nature. And so then you get in the way of allowing someone to run. So no indicted candidate should be allowed to run. Think of the consequences of that, even though it's not applicable in this case. If we had that rule, what would it mean for other cases? And would then indictments fly just to keep people off the ballot? That's the question that I have with that. I think we need more work on that because it's so obvious that we have this gaping hole in our election process that someone like him would be allowed, could allegedly commit these crimes and then would be allowed to run, to be accused of these crimes. No. I guess because maybe we all saw it play out. We heard the phone call, we heard the tapes, we saw the riot, we saw the speech before the riot, we saw the January 6th committee hearings, we have looked at the evidence. I think because of that, it's hard to say allegedly, even though I understand legally it's required. So for us, for many people, Laura Beth and myself, it's outrageous that he would be allowed to run and possibly get back into office in order to do more damage and commit more crimes against America. And so there has to be some type of way that this behavior is stopped and the country is protected. But I don't know how you do that without protecting other candidates down the road from having the legal system used as a way to just stop their candidacy because people are scared of them. I don't know. Brian, boy, are you right. It'll be interesting to see what the hell, who the hell would accept the Donald's invite to run as his VP candidate in 2024. Who would? Imagine you're taking your place on the dark side in history. Who do you think would run with him? Haley? I don't think so. Vivek Ramaswamy, perhaps. I don't know. What a horrible position to be in the history books after everything he has done allegedly, to stand up and stand right by him. No thanks. Anyway, thank you for the discussion. I truly appreciate your words and batting that around today. Let's talk about Senator Dianne Feinstein for a moment if we can. There's something going on with this trust. And her husband died and had a trust. He has 3 daughters, and she has a daughter. And she's the beneficiary of the trust until her passing, and then I think most of the assets go to Richard Blum's daughters. Well, there's all kinds of trouble right now. There were allegations that Dianne Feinstein needed money to pay for medical bills, as we know she's had a lot of medical issues as of late, and that the money wasn't coming in a timely manner. Now we understand that there's a multi-million-dollar beach house near Stinson Beach in the North Bay. So pretty there. The houses are so amazing. Well, while she's alive, the multi-million-dollar Stinson Beach property is hers to live in and use, etc. But after she passes, I believe it becomes the Blum daughters. So the original petition, as the sole beneficiary of a trust set up by Richard Blum, said apparently Senator Dianne Feinstein is entitled to sell this Stinson Beach house, and she wants to sell it as soon as possible. This is according to her daughter, Catherine Feinstein, who's now kind of taken over the managing of the trust for her mom. They say she wants to sell it fast. they the Catherine Feinstein's husband, I believe, spearheaded a um, repairs of the property, renovations to the property in order to kind of spruce it up and sell it quickly. Catherine Feinstein is saying that the other co-trustee, who was someone that Richard Blum, the senator's late husband, worked with, doesn't want to sell the Stinson Beach property, is going against Senator Feinstein's wishes and aligning with Blum's 3 daughters, Feinstein's stepdaughters, who would like, they say, to make use of the Stinson Beach property during Senator Feinstein's lifetime and after her death at her expense. This according to Senator Feinstein's daughter, Catherine. Attorneys representing Klein say Catherine and her husband, Rick Mariano, have attempted to maneuver around Klein, who is a co-trustee of this trust, making unilateral decisions about the trust and having no legal authority over the trust because of they called a realtor and they tried to make some renovations or repairs to the property. And it was done without Klein's knowledge, and that they have no authority to take such actions. So they did, I guess, call a real estate agent from Sotheby's to do a market analysis, to talk about proposed listing agreement. They say they can't do it. So it's just one of these situations where you see, even before Senator Feinstein has passed, that there seems to be this ugliness when it comes to fighting over money and the trust. And I don't know if they're trying to sell this property because somehow then the money could be used for, go to Senator Feinstein. Sometimes when you sell a property, it does something different where, money can then be spent instead of the house being passed on. I don't know. What it does say to me, though, is, and I think we knew that Senator Feinstein is kind of not as mentally with it as she once was. But even this article in SF Gate says it casts doubts on her awareness of the ongoing legal proceedings. Multiple petitions in this case, multiple fights over the trust, whether it's money for medicine, now the multi-million-dollar beach house. It gets ugly. It gets ugly. I just, it's sad when it comes to this, but it's also, I guess a window into rich people fighting over money. It's sad, and yucky, and also somewhat interesting. So, yeah. Let's go into the comments and see what you have to say. I don't know if you're interested in Senator Dianne Feinstein's multi-million-dollar beach house. James writes, this happened with me when I was taking care of my mom and my brother was trying to get some of her money before she died. Does it feel wrong to you? I mean, I know people do it, but it just doesn't sit right. Mario writes, some people like fighting over money and stuff they didn't earn. They see a way to stick their fingers in the pie and they just want it. Judy says maybe part of the family wants to use the proceeds to go toward her medical expenses. I thought that when you were a member of the legislature, you had amazing health care and everything was paid for. Perhaps being in the hospital for, a 3-month stint, you have some bills to pay. I don't know. Did Feinstein not take care of this in her will? I think the trust was, I think perhaps most of the money was from Richard Blum. And so it's his trust that that is in question here, it seems to me. And so while Senator Feinstein is a beneficiary of the trust, already the fighting has begun. Yeah, healthcare for life. That's right. That's what I thought. Go. Heather, I think she has more than Medicare. She's got the legislative health care. It's like the government health care. It's the best you can get. Not good enough for us, apparently, but it's good enough for them. I see there's some issues in the chat with people getting upset with each other, and I haven't seen the bad comments come through. So I'm sorry if I have been remiss in not blocking someone. Please don't come here to troll. If you have a different opinion, even if you support Trump, we'll accept you as long as you're not a jerk about it. If I see that you're a jerk about it, I will have to block you because it's a place of exchange of ideas, of pleasantness, and goodwill. So a discussion is appropriate, but being mean, nasty person is not. So please take that into consideration before you post. And if anyone sees something they think I should be aware of, please feel free to mention it in the chat to me. Thank you very much. David Odell writes, when my dad died, I made it clear that I had no interest in any inheritance. He had already given me a few sentimental items prior to his passing, and that was all I wanted. It's weird, though, having to think about fighting with your siblings over your parents' money. I don't ever want to be in that position, but I know that it happens often. So I just think people get weird. Yeah. Oh, well. Okay. So I mean, I disagree that there's a lie, Robert, but yeah, but please be kind. Thank you. Doesn't Feinstein have her own money? I thought she did, but when there's gazillions on the line and ways to get your hands on it, maybe kind of getting around some of um the caveats of the trust. Don't people always want more, more, more? Sometimes enough isn't good enough. Angel writes, it's most likely utilizing the strategy employed by the middle class to avoid inheritance taxes that the Dianne Feinstein's daughter may be trying to protect. I don't know for sure. Yeah, I don't know either. She may be in the right here. I don't know. But it is interesting. I don't know who's right and who's wrong. I just know when um sometimes when I see stuff like this happen, um, it just feels oogie to me. So, can we talk for a moment about Hawaii? Because I do want to make sure that you have the latest information. The death toll on Maui is now at 99, but we are told by the governor of Hawaii that only 3% of the buildings on Front Street have been searched, and that it's very likely they'll find between 20 and 30 bodies per day. Now it's 25% of the burn area has been searched. So it's very clear and very likely that the death toll will rise. They're calling it the deadliest U.S. wildfire in more than a century. And 99 people is an awful, catastrophic loss. But I think we're going to see way more than that, sadly. The governor called it a tragedy beyond tragedies. Some of the names of the deceased are being released now. People were found as they tried to run from the fire. They were out in the open. They were in cars. They were in the water. Yeah. A lot of people had to run. They left all they had behind. Phones have been incinerated, so people have nowhere to contact loved ones who are worried about them. There are as many as 2,000 people still on the missing list. Some estimates put it lower at about 800 or 900. And it's unclear, can we just not reach people because they don't have their phones and it's been spotty with cell service there? Or did the worst happen to them? There are now 20 dogs being used to sift through the rubble. They say FEMA staff members who are used to going to areas of disaster They say nothing can prepare you for what you see here in Hawaii. It's an emotional toll and impact uh, is being taken on them. I mean, I think you have to have counseling there as well for the people that are doing the search. 9 people are in a specialized burn unit in Honolulu. They had to be transferred to another island to receive care. And how do you identify all the victims? Because a lot of people were burned and can't be recognized. And so now then the only way to do it is through DNA. So they're going to have to get DNA from people who are missing family members. They're now putting out a call to urge anyone who's missing a family member to come forward and provide DNA samples to help with the identification process. It has to be DNA. Can't be fingerprints, has to be DNA. More than 400 hotel rooms are being made available for those displaced, and 1,400 Airbnb units are ready for them starting today. 160 people are offering to share their homes. So the shelters are starting to empty. I have seen multiple reports of such aloha, where we talked yesterday about a business owner that has opened his home to 8 of his employees that lost their homes to come stay with him. I saw a story about a woman, I want to say she was in Makawao, and multiple family members who lived in Lahaina ran. And when they ran, they all ran to her house. So 5 homes were lost. 5 of her relatives who owned property lost their homes, and they all converged on her house. So she has the occupants of 5 households now living in her house, her home. I think it's 20 people. But I think you gather there in these times of crisis, and thank goodness she has, room on the floor, rollaway beds, extra blankets, and things to keep her family together and safe. We know what that's like here in California. As many of us have friends or family that have lost homes and would absolutely, in a heartbeat, open our doors. There is a lawsuit, though, brewing over power lines. And much like California, I saw a story yesterday that the thought is that the fire was sparked by power lines and these hurricane force winds. So Hawaiian Electric is now facing a lawsuit claiming power lines blown over by these high winds helped spark the fire. The Hawaiian Electric didn't have a system in place like PG&E does for the PSPS, the public safety power shutoff. And I wonder why. The lesson was learned here and the policy put in place, but the lesson wasn't taken to heart by other electric agencies or utilities. Like, why do you have to learn the lesson yourself? Why couldn't you have seen what happened in California, have been told that you live in a very dangerous zone where wildfire is likely, and think to yourselves, hey, we need to look at what California did after their wildfires because we could maybe prevent stuff from happening here. Is it blaming? Is it were they Monday morning quarterbacking that this happened? And so, you know, we need to deal with it now and not go back and coulda, shoulda, woulda on it. I don't know, but it would be nice if we could use the lessons learned from each other. Because in 80-mile-an-hour winds, if we had that, you can bet our power would be off, right? And rightly so. I don't want loss of life or homes to burn. The Coast Guard in Maui is now moving from search and rescue mode to containing potentially hazardous materials in the ocean. There is a 100-foot boom at the mouth of the Lahaina harbor because boats burned and sank. And so you have oil and fuel and a sheen, and then all the properties that were along the coast. The chemicals used in construction materials could seep into the ocean. So I think that has to be the first order of cleanup after the search is over. The response apparently is being reviewed as well. So, how firefighters responded, how first responders dealt with this fire, what happened with the warning system that fell apart. It's all under a review by Hawaii's Attorney General. They're looking at reports that firefighters had weak or no pressure at some fire hydrants, that the 400 disaster alarms failed to activate as the fire spread. What happened? It's all under review, and we'll find out more about it. The U.S. Fire Administration, though, is calling this fire in Lahaina the deadliest U.S. wildfire in more than 100 years. And I think as more people are uncovered in the rubble, maybe it will be the most deadly fire ever. Among those who've passed, a 60-year-old woman and her partner trying to leave. Her name is Carol Hartley. His name is Charles Paxton. They got separated in the smoke. They were trying to run. They couldn't see through the dark smoke. It felt like a tornado. They kept calling out each other's names. He was screaming, "Run, run, run." And he eventually couldn't hear her anymore. They got separated. He was found by his friends. He was found on the couple's property over the weekend. It's sad. Frankie Trejos, they called him Uncle Frankie. He was trying to flee the fire. His family was hopeful, but he was also found. So we're finding out more about who the people were that passed away, and I'm sure the stories will be heartbreaking. But I guess I'm interested to know what happened to the siren systems and what happened to the fire hydrants and why there weren't water boats outside Lahaina. Why they weren't prepared when they were warned. It's frustrating. And I've read reports that people are already getting social media posts asking them to sell their properties instead of rebuilding. And if that happens, then what does that area look like? Do we care that it won't have the same flavor, that it won't be built back the same, that big resorts could move in, or mega mansions could move in, and Hawaiians might be moved out of this? I'll call it a sacred area. It was among the first capitals of Hawaii. It's where the royalty lived at one point. So, yeah, there's a lot of questions here. They have 400 alarms, mostly used to warn of tsunamis, but they are for all natural disasters, and they didn't activate. Is it because power was lost? Is it because they were blown down in hurricane force winds? I don't know. I don't know. The emergency response authorities think the sirens were immobilized by extreme heat. Maybe they couldn't operate in that heat. But again, they're investigating. So, but I'm still, it's when you watch every day what's happening there. I'm still so sad, but they say there are stages of grief over something, and I don't want to act like I know anybody who personally who died in this fire. I might, but I don't know that yet. But I guess in Hawaii, the next stage of this is anger, and people are getting pretty upset as they look back and think, why were we not more prepared? So, another story that I thought was interesting to talk about today is a federal investigation of Vanderbilt University for allegedly sharing transgender health records. It's not the first time we've heard this. The folks at Vanderbilt University Medical Center apparently didn't ask first before they released transgender patients' medical records to the Tennessee Attorney General. The Office of Civil Rights contacted the medical center, and they aren't commenting anymore about it because now it's a legal case. But they're being sued by two people who say they were among 100 current and former patients whose records were turned over to the Tennessee Attorney General earlier this year. They say Vanderbilt turned over non-anonymized medical records, so names right on there for everyone to see, without the patient's knowledge, and the state request for information is part of an effort negatively targeting the transgender community. Why would a medical center do this? There are laws about patient privacy. Why would they break this? I don't understand. In a time when we know transgender people are being targeted, laws against them are being crafted and put into place. There's a protest at the library every time drag queen has story hour. And they're being trotted out as part of some culture war that they had no part in creating. So why would you, Vanderbilt University Medical Center, turn over records with names on them? I don't understand. Well, the Tennessee Attorney General apparently says they have legal authority in an investigation that required the hospital to provide all the copies of patient medical records relevant to their investigation, that the hospital was obligated to do so. They say they comply with all healthcare privacy and security requirements under the law. But if that's the case, then are people going to feel comfortable going to a doctor to get care if they know that their records aren't being safeguarded and can be passed over and they can be politically persecuted because of who they are? The lawsuit being filed by the Office of Civil Rights. The Office of Civil Rights says the more we learn about the breadth and the deeply personal information that the medical center disclosed, the more horrified we are. All the plaintiffs in the case are using pseudonyms. They don't want their names out there. However you feel about transgender issues, this breach of privacy should be upsetting to us all. Your records could be next, right? This hospital last year suspended gender-affirming surgeries for minors. They say now, through a new law, all gender-affirming care for individuals under 18 is illegal. So I don't know if the investigation had to do with that, and that's why Tennessee officials are looking into what happened at that hospital. I don't know. But I do know that Republican leaders sent a letter to the hospital requesting that Vanderbilt stop all gender transitioning surgeries on minors. So it appears that's what it's about. But I'm perplexed as to why a hospital would feel it's acceptable to break privacy protocol. I don't understand how that can be. And I hope the lawsuit, if they are shown to have done such a thing, is successful. I really do. There are this is a disturbing story too. There are these police officers, there's 6 of them out of Mississippi. They're called the Goon Squad. They're former Mississippi law enforcement officers who have now pleaded guilty this week to all state charges facing them from the torture and abuse of 2 Black men. I mean, some of this stuff is so ugly, I don't even want to say what happened here. I will say, though, that they tortured these people. These are officers of the law. They're supposed to be the good guys. They're accused of torturing people. All 6 officers, former officers, I should say, important note, appeared yesterday in court in their prison jumpsuits, wearing shackles. They pleaded guilty to federal charges in which prosecutors say they kicked down the door of a home in Braxton, Mississippi, where these men were living, these 2 black men, and assaulted them for 2 hours. They didn't have a warrant. They didn't. And of course, they weren't going to report a use of excessive violence, but they called themselves the Goon Squad. They're charged with altogether 13 felonies in connection with the torture and physical abuse of 2 men that night. I mean, it's horrifying to think this could even happen. That's my privilege talking, right? I get it. Because I think it can never happen to me. I'm trying to relate to their situation and I can't do it. It's so unthinkable. The officer, one of the attorneys said they've admitted to their wrongdoing. They pled guilty to all charges, taken responsibility for this horrific harm. One of the victims was shot in the mouth. I'll just tell you, these victims, Michael Jenkins and Eddie Parker, filed a federal lawsuit alleging the officers illegally entered their home, handcuffed, kicked, waterboarded, tased, attempted to sexually assault them over nearly 2 hours before one of the deputies put a gun in Jenkins' mouth and shot him. They are accused, the deputies, of repeatedly using racial slurs in the course of these violent acts. Oppressive, hateful against these African American victims. The defendants were motivated on the basis of race and the color of skin of the persons they assaulted. Why this house? Why these 2 men? Was it just a crime of opportunity? I don't know. What started this off, what kicked this off is that there was a complaint received by one of the deputies from his white neighbor who told him several black men were staying in a white woman's home and that they had reported seeing suspicious behavior there. The deputies were told there might be surveillance camera on the property and to knock on the door instead of kicking it down. Yeah. When you read the story, it's horrifying. I'm horrified that this could happen here. And again, you know, maybe it's the naivete in me speaking. How the supposed good guys could do this to someone? I don't know. And if there's a goon squad in 2023 in Tennessee, are there other goon squads out there? Listen, I am grateful for police. If I had an emergency, if I needed help, they'd be the first people I turn to. I try to buy them coffee if I see them at Starbucks, try to pay for their ice cream at the ice cream store, whatever it may be, to show my gratitude that they are helping us, that they are there, that they're running toward the bullets flying instead of away in school shootings and other catastrophes. And I know that not all police officers are bad. But I think when you see something like this, all police officers should be upset about this and speaking out about it and saying this is not who we are and weeding out the people like this in their departments so trust can be restored. It's really upsetting. Well, we have talked about Trump. We will have more conversations about it on the Mark Thompson Show coming up in merely moments. Thank you so much for this conversation. I'll read a comment from Jennifer. Hi, Jennifer, who says the good cops that know these cops exist still do nothing, and that makes them bad cops. Yep. Jim says the good old boys are all over who have power and a gun and very little consequence. We got a lot to fix about this country, don't we? Let me please take the opportunity to thank Harry for a $5 super sticker. Thank you for your kind words and your support. Despite my technical problems and everything else, the conversation with you guys has been great today. Cynthia writes with a $20 super sticker as well. And thank you so much for contributing to this show. And of course, Beth Farmer with a $20 super sticker who wants me to buy a backup keyboard with a cord. I'll get the real one fixed. It's time. It's long overdue. I thought I could get around it. I can't. I'm telling you guys, I had a horrible moment today where I was so frustrated because I was so late getting onto the show because my keyboard wasn't working that I actually beat on it, and I will say it went flying. It felt cathartic in the moment, but now I feel like a toddler. Like how I acted was horrible. So thank you for the contributions to the show. And thank you for all the ways you participate in the chats, clicking the like button, subscribing, sharing the parts of the show that you like, and for just spending your time with us on the morning show. So Nikki will be back tomorrow, and I am delighted because I have missed her. So I'm sure we'll be talking more about Trump, even though anonymous, I don't know. I know you don't want to hear about it, but I think, again, we have to continue this conversation. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your patience with me today. I did that wrong. Wrong video. Let me end it with Jacob, and I'll see you over on the Mark Thompson show in just a few minutes. Thanks, you guys. Bye.
Nikki, you're all so awesome. You're proud, like a beautiful blossom. You're all so the best. I really can't rest. You're all so awesome.